la présentation.
Et donc on se met là-bas.
Non, 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 ici. Nous, pour le premier panel, tout se passe ici. Je suis un texte.
All right. Your attention, please. Thank you. My name is Philippe Cesson. I'm the president and chairman of the board of the San Diego French-American Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the Economy Department of the French Embassy, the Paris Region Economic Development Agency, also known as PRIME, the French Bio Beach Association, and our own French-American Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to welcome you to the French-American Biotech Connection. First, it's going to be a very interactive session with the audience, so at all time, please feel free to jump in and ask questions. Want this to be really, really interactive. At 7:30, although we're going to do our best to stay on time, so we're planning on 7:30 to be a networking opportunity for all of us. There will be two parts to the discussion panel. And the first person on the panel will be Stéphane Richard, and I will introduce him in a minute. First, I want to tell you a little bit about the San Diego French-American Chamber of Commerce. We've been in San Diego since about 1976, and our business is to help French-American companies grow their business. We've been very active in the community, and we're really delighted to be a part of this. Something that is of interest to the life science community in San Diego is that this year we're going to have the second edition of the French-American Business Awards. It's our gala, our annual gala, where we celebrate French-American entrepreneurship. What's really, really interesting about the San Diego region is the number of French-American entrepreneurs that creates vibrant community. It's very different from the rest of the United States. We are the French-American Chamber of Commerce in 27 chapters all over the US, and really the San Diego region is unique. It's very vibrant, a lot of very small and very attractive mid-sized businesses. And if you want to know more about the chamber, you can stop by outside. We have a little booth for you. I just wanted to make a little reflection. In about 2.5 weeks, French nationals that have registered will be able to vote. For the first time, people in San Diego will be able to vote directly from the French presidential elections. If you think that the drama surrounding the primaries in the US is very rifting, you should really witness what's happening in France right now. There's 12 candidates that are really fighting toe and nail to be the next president, and there's a lot of momentum between 2 or 3 of them. It's impossible to predict who's going to win. There's probably going to be a cliffhanger, but the resulting is probably going to change dramatically and hopefully for the better France as a country. A very interesting concept that I started recently is young innovative companies. And we're going to talk more about this during the panel. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Stéphane Richard, that is going to start the first panel.
Thank you very much, Philippe. So it's a big pleasure for me to be here in this auditorium of the Salk Institute. This institute's been my house, my home for a few years now. And it's great to see everybody that is working at the French Embassy and the local actors to come here in this auditorium. It's great to have those two important delegations of French people coming over here to San Diego. And so we're going to start by a first panel, and then we will have some questions and answers. So it's very important for the rest of the evening that everybody speaks to the mic with a nice voice, not like mine, because everything is recorded. And so the sound and the picture will be important later on. So when we will have the question and answer, please come to the microphones and introduce yourself. So the first, we're going to have a first panel with two main actors. The first one is François Ferré, and the second one is Luc Rousseau. So I will first start by introducing François Ferré, who's been a local actor for a number of years. He is the founder and co-CEO of Althea Technology. This local biotech company is doing pretty well, and is doing so well that now François is part member of this local group of angels that are the Tech Post Angels, and he will describe for us the point of those angels and how they work. Now, the second part of the panel, we are delighted to have Mr. Luc Rousseau, who's the Undersecretary for Innovation and Industry of France, also the General Directorate of Industry, but I think the first title sounds a little more common for the local people, for us. So without further ado, I will ask François to come over here.
Thank you, Stefan. Is it on? Yes. Okay. Good evening, everybody, and I'm delighted to be here tonight and talk about my favorite topic, entrepreneurship. I happen to be first an entrepreneur, I think now, although I was raised as a scientist, and really been worshipping entrepreneurship for the last 8 years. Through my company that I started with my wife in '98, we started Biotech company and been able to grow that company to 110 people today, and we're hoping to reach close to $40 million in revenues in '07. We've been growing quite fast, and one of the reasons we're able to grow rather fast, rather than doing the bootstrapping that's pretty current in early stage companies, is the fact we've received some investment early on in the life of the company through angels. We received $2 million to start the company. 75% of that was angel money. So you can see the connection here. We've been blessed by success, and therefore we are very, very pleased to be able to give back and to really sponsor entrepreneurs in this community, and it's been a great, great adventure for us at that level as well. My topic tonight is to describe to you a bit the role of angels in fostering entrepreneurship in the US, and you're going to see that some of the numbers are pretty exciting. In fact, let's start with that. When you look at the impact of angel investment in the US, very few people understand that it represents numbers that are just enormous. 25 billion was invested in this country, over 51,000 ventures by angels alone. That number is equivalent to all the money is invested by venture capital as well. Although, of course, the number of companies that VC put money in is about tenfold less. And hence, that's the number we have here. Interestingly enough, over the last 3 years, healthcare services and medical device have been receiving a big chunk of that money, 21%, and represent, in fact, the biggest group that's receiving angel money today. And Biotech is following closely with 18%. So combined, it's a staggering, again, amount of money of about 10 billion put into those spaces just for angel money. Let me go back a bit. What is angel money? Angel money represents the money that comes after what we call, classically the 3 Fs, which is, family, friend, and fools. And it's really, usually, they only go to about 50 to 100,000. Anything that's beyond that is beyond the grasp of family and friends. And so angels try to fill the gap where VC can come later on at 2 million and plus, there's a big gap here in funding, and angels try to fill that gap. So that's what we call angel money. These are investors that want to take an equity part into a company and believe in the concept and the entrepreneur and want to get a go at it. Angel investment is a significant contributor to job growth. 200,000 in 2006 were about 4 jobs for investment. But what's important is to realize that it's a time of investment. And of course, as companies grow, this can be multiplied by a factor of 10 very rapidly. So you can see the impact also on the US economy right there. And angel investment continue to be the largest source of seed and startup capital. And I just mentioned the example of my company was very, very clear that that's really got off the ground. And 86% of angel money goes to seed and post-seed investment. That's humongous. And again, without this money, a lot of ventures in this country, software, biotech, medical device could never see light because the money is not there to grow this business early on. If you didn't have angel money, there would be no businesses. So this is essential. Angel investment is an essential part of the growth of technology company, biotech company, high growth, if you wish, industries in this country. If you look at the numbers of angel investors in this country, there's about around 250,000 of active angel investors at any time in this country. So you look at the numbers again out there, 25 billion over 250,000, if my math is correct, that's an average of about 100,000 invested by angel investors in a year time, okay? So those are the big numbers. Let me focus more to this community here, which is obviously what I've been part of, and I've been part of the Tech Coast Angels. I've been a member of this. I'm a former board member. I want to say also I'm not representing TCA tonight. I'm just talking as an entrepreneur and an investor myself. But this is the institution I've been part of and very, very proud of. We've got 4 networks in San Diego, Orange County, Los Angeles, and Santa Barbara. So really focus on Southern California. And look at the numbers here. In 2006, collectively, we invested in 31 deals representing $10 million. We happen to be the largest angel network in the US. If you look back at the numbers, I was saying that overall it's been invested $25 billion. What's wrong with that picture? Well, the picture shows that there's an enormous number of individuals in this country that are angels. Pretty much very small group, maybe a couple of partners, maybe a couple of friends that love to invest in high-risk investment. But really, in terms of being connected in networks, you can see here it's a drop in the bucket in terms of the impact on the numbers. So I'm saying is that it's not a huge network of people. It is completely scattered all over the U.S., which is a very interesting concept, and I think very unique to this country. Looking back, 97, Tech Coast Angel started, invested $85 million altogether, 130 early-stage companies. In fact, we passed 100 company mark at the end of 2005. And as I said, the typical investment of angels fits perfectly in between family and friends and later-stage VC, which is not late-stage, but VC funding. Very interestingly, you can see here again the importance of angel is that that's really the seed money for later on investment by VCs. Again, a factor of 10 about what angel put in the companies, VC come later on and add another, tenfold higher amount of capital to grow this company. So again, just a very interesting concept of get the company started and move with that. And really, if you look at our impact, we've done a lot of deals in Southern California. What are we looking for? We're looking for a number of winning characteristics in companies. I think I put resourceful management team because that's my favorite. Without a very strong entrepreneur and a very strong management team, you've got nothing. I don't care if you have technology, if you have whatever. This is number one by a mile. Okay. Then comes, of course, integrity. You've got to have something to solve. You've got to have customer validation. Most of the time, we're very much at that threshold when you start to have a prototype and some customer validation, not always a lot. You have to have a defensible advantage, obviously, and we really focus again on tech, so Tech Coast Angel, and mostly on high tech and biotech. We've got to see the light at the end of the tunnel, meaning that you have to have put together a credible exit strategy. Again, it's an enormous amount of work. Putting together a group like that and coming up with the right kind of investment. Look at the funnel here. It's just very impressive. 500 applications a year, 315 pre-screening, 100 screening. We do about 50 due diligence a year, and yet at the end of the day, we invest in 12 to 20 deals. Not very different from VCs, in fact. So it's a very involved process. It's not, like I said, it's not the family-friend environment here. You're way above that in terms of due diligence and understanding the concept, understanding the entrepreneur, and so on and so forth. So you can see here why it serves such a beautiful place in the whole process of entrepreneurship. It's because it's really doing a lot of the hard work for no money, by the way, up front, and with the idea of investing in a very high-risk venture. And a lot of the return we get from it, by the way, is a joy of seeing an enterprise grow. It's a joy to be an entrepreneur. And the money will follow if you do that right. But really, the reason why you're an angel most of the time, I am in that case, it's because I really enjoy it. It's so much fun to see a company grow, to see an entrepreneur, succeed. So I love that part. We've been investing recently in a number of biotech locally. A number of them, and my company is working with Coda Genomics, for example. So not only do we invest, but we also work together. It's a network, right? So we do try to really do something together to grow this community as a successful enterprise. So this is a pretty significant number of companies that TC has invested in the space of biotech and healthcare. We also, of course, want to make sure that what we started had a chance to succeed later on. So we also have a number of VC affiliates, people that we invite to our dinner when we have presentation. Just before people invest in the company, we have presentation of the company. And the VCs are also there to start judging the merit of what we've what we come up with. And again, a number of our, as I mentioned before, of our VC affiliates have been investing in our companies later on. So that's a very important aspect of the program as well, because otherwise you can find yourself, really in trouble if you invest early in the company and there's no follow-on. That's troublesome. So in a nutshell, let me close here. I hope I didn't take too much time. This is exciting. This space of angel investment, I've been doing that now since 2003. It's been a good part of what I'm doing also now in this community. I really enjoy that. But I think it plays an essential role in entrepreneurship in America. I think the numbers speak for themselves. And also, if you look at the big gap we have right now in investment in this country, in the rest of the world, where the VC model is trying to readjust, and they're certainly not, they're getting a little bit more risk adverse, in fact, for VCs, which is interesting. There is a growing gap in early stage investment. And that's exactly where angels can play a major role, and that's exactly where they're playing a major role. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So after listening to this local version, now we're going to listen to our second panelist, who is Luc Rousseau. So Mr. Luc Rousseau has been working at the French ministries for a number of years, and he was the advisor for the French Ministry of Industry for something like 3 years, and for the past 2 years he's been himself the Vice Minister of Innovation and Industry. And he's going to talk to us about the public counterpart of this French initiative known as the competitivity business.
Thank you. So some words to have a short glimpse on what's going on in France, especially in biotech area. Here we are. Biotech is a dynamic industry in a key economic sector in France. As you know, for a long time we are performing rather well in pharma industry. We are number one in Europe, especially with Sanofi Aventis, who is ranking as number 3 in the world, but also with all the major pharma industries that are present in France for manufacturing, but also for R&D centers, such as Pfizer, Novartis, GSK, Eli Lilly, and so on. Some figures, where the biotech industry is about 400 companies in France, employing about 6,000 people, among them 3,600 in R&D. And presently, 86 products are in clinical development. A new impulse has been given in the last year by the French government for innovation. First, in year 2004, started the Young Innovative Company status. This status is very attractive because you have no social contributions during the first 8 years of the company, and you have no tax for the 3 first years where you are profitable. The second impulse was given 1 year later in 2005 with 4 major initiatives. The creation of Agency for Industrial Innovation for big projects with subsidies ranging for projects between 40 to 100 million euros. The second one was to double the means of the OSEO agency. It's a merge of the former Anvar and a bank for SMEs. It's supporting about 2,000 projects a year with an average grant of 100,000 euro. It's very easy to get it within some weeks. We have created a new national research agency. In a way, it's a little National Science Foundation, which aims is to have more competition for grants in the upstream projects. Some of them, about a fourth of them, are involving companies, especially SMEs. And the last one is competitiveness clusters. I will detail that in a minute. The main objectives of the cluster policy is first to get to enhance France industrial competitiveness in order to get economic development faster. And therefore, we place the company at the center of innovation process, downstream of invention. And therefore, also, we favor synergies with local R&D potentials in order to attract new investment on skills. How is a French cluster organized? Three kinds of actors are present in a cluster: companies, research centers, and universities or educational institutions. The heart of our policy is to encourage all kinds of cooperation and innovation between laboratories and companies, either from university or from pure research institutions. The clusters were chosen after a call, so it's a bottom-up process that occurred 2 years ago. The key elements of success of a cluster for us, in order to build this ecosystem that makes a cluster successful, is to get a common development strategy between the different partners, to have strong partnerships between different actors, and a focus on technology with high market potential. The criteria that was described by Mr. Vallée is are very similar to us. And to develop an international strategy with cooperation. Which are the healthcare clusters? We have got 2 years ago 66 competitiveness clusters in France. 16 of them are world-class clusters. And among these 66 clusters, 8 have a focus specifically on healthcare or biotechnology. And 3 of them are world-class clusters. One is located in Strasbourg with Nobel Prize Jean-Marie Laine about genomics to drugs and non-invasive surgery or on medical devices. One is located in Lyon about infectious disease on vaccines and diagnosis. And the last one, the biggest one, is around Paris. Is very various cancer, CNS, central nervous system, infectious diseases, imaging, molecular and cellular therapies, and drug development. The government decided to invest much money in the cluster policy. On 1.5 billion euros has been decided for the 3 years ranging from 2006 to next year, 2008. About half of it comes from various agencies that I mentioned previously, and the other directly from the government. And this money is given through calls, so it's also bottom-up process. And we have, with this bottom-up process, directly managed by the government, we have selected for a year 46 projects. Among them, 27 were led by SME. On the grants of the government, the amount of the grants is in this area of biotech is 84 million euros. 50 coming from the state and 30 coming from local authorities on the same projects. So it's an average of about 2 million euros for a project. Project must be supported by 2 companies and a public laboratory. It lasts about 3 years, between 2 to 4 years. You have here some examples of projects conducted either by small companies for development of meganuclears, mediated surgery, or you have here a new way to treat depression by post-transcriptional regulation with a new molecule. This project is very big. It was supported by the Agency for Industrial Innovation. So the grant is about 50 million euros for this project. It's led by Biomérieux. It's an intermediate company with revenues about 1 billion euros a year. So it's a major project. And the other are smaller one, and most of them conducted by SMEs or young innovative companies such as OPE. Foreign companies that are working in France on cluster are considered as French. So whatever the nationality of the people, whatever the nationality of the capital, whatever the nationality of the management, what's important in order to be supported is to be active in France. When you are active in France, you can be supported by the French governmental money and the local authority. The other interest for biotech companies to be involved in French clusters is also to access to top-level research centers such as Institut Pasteur, INSERM, CNRS, or CEA. And it will help to develop collaboration with international teams, especially throughout Europe. We have program of cooperation inside Europe, and the clusters make it more easy to be involved in these programs. So, if you want to meet the clusters, you can tonight meet one of them. And next month in BioBoston, we have a meeting on Sunday the 6th, where you can meet the 8 French biotech clusters very directly. So thank you very much for your attention.
So I would like to now open the floor to a number of questions. So please go ahead and go to the mic if you're not too shy.
So we heard about the angels. I suspect that the government is the angel, the big angel in France. But what happened? You were giving approximately, is it 2 to 3 million euros for a company for a period of, I think you said 3 years. What happens to them then? Is there an active venture community in France that could obviously take that young company and develop it into the next Amgen, for example?
Yes, we have an active community in France. It's smaller than in the US, but the country is also smaller. It's increasing very regularly. Last year, the VCs have invested in small companies in France about 1 billion euros. And one aim of the government is to increase it. So we have an initiative that I've not presented here that's called France Investment. And the government will put 2 billion euros on the table. And some big funds such as AXA will put between 1 and 2 billion other euros. And this fund will have a leverage effect on venture capital in France for the next 3 to 5 years in order to have more money invested in by the venture capital in companies. So it's growing strongly, and we think it's a good thing, and we have also an incentive for that. The money I mentioned for this France Investment Fund is not a grant, it's a leverage effect with money, it's a co-investment in venture funds with private money in order to have a double. So when the private people put 1 million
They put in
euro,
1 million, you
another.
put 1 million. So you've got to raise
It's
the...
what we call a fund of funds.
Oh, I see. Does the company owe anything back to the government? There is no strings attached?
No. What I've presented, that's granted. So there's no back payment for the cluster grants conducted by the government. For the big agencies, there is a payment back. So a part is a grant and a part is a loan. And the payback is depending on the revenues generated by the project. And the payback can be higher than the loan, of course. Yeah. There is an upside. It can be up to double, but if the company is very successful. So it's a way of sharing the risk.
Maybe I can have one more question, maybe for Francois. Do you think, you've been here for, I don't know, how many years in California? 10 or 15, or maybe longer, I don't know. Do you think a similar system could work in France? Are there people that are, with the right people in trying to create a group of angels willing to sponsor little companies? Or maybe it exists already. Are you aware of it?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think maybe to Mr. Lecousseau. I'm not aware of a lot of angel investment in France. I'm sure there's some. I think that if you look at, again, the number that I put out there, even if we downscale that for the size of France, it's still a staggering number. And I'm very doubtful that you've got that kind of magnitude happening in France. So I don't think, it's interesting. I was talking to my dad today, and I said, tonight I'm going to be talking about angels. And it's like, on the phone, I was apart and say, are you getting spiritual or something? and my dad used to be, involved at a high level in the Crédit Agricole and is a financier of some sort, although not in the venture terms, but not completely lost out there. And he had no concept of angel investment. So I don't think it's very strong, and maybe Mr. Luc also can address that as well. I'm sure there's some of that. It may be more related to family and friends than angels. And can it be done? I'm sure it can. I don't know how fast it can grow, and it's been such a part of this culture. I think it's very unique. It's been very unique to the US. I think the amount of success that Angel had been seeing here is also very unique, and it's just a part of the make of this country, I think, which is phenomenal, of course. But there's no reason why, in my mind, it cannot be done in France. It will take some time.
So we are encouraging business angels in France. As it was said, what is sometimes called business angel in France is very various and starts from family to more organized people. And we will labelize some business angels groups, and these groups will get a leverage effect from the government, from the same fund as I mentioned, from France Investment. So when they put 1 million or 10 million euros in a fund, we will put also 10 million euros. So it will have a leverage of 2. But what's necessary is that the angels are a big professional in their analysis, but also, for instance, the time they need to analyze a project and to give an answer to the entrepreneur, and not so that the company has not to wait 4 months before knowing what will be done.
Oh, please go ahead.
I had a question on the earlier statement on the...
Could you state your name?
Yeah, Cornelius Diamond. I'm from Prediction Sciences, local company here. Can you elaborate more on this tax policy for new, young, innovative companies and for companies that are considering opening an office, say in Europe, or perhaps even domiciling there? Is there a difference between that? And how do you think that this initiative that has been started over the last couple of years might be changing with the results of the new elections if certain people get elected?
Yes, about the young innovative companies, the system has started in year 2004, and today we have about 1,300 companies that are profiting from this system, and for an amount of about 100 million euros a year. So it's about $100,000 per company per year. So you have no social contributions for all R&D people or R&D connected people in the company for the first 8 years of the company. A young innovative company is a company that is younger than 8 and where more than 50% of its revenue is invested in R&D. And whatever the nationality of the people, of the money invested in the company.
Okay.
And we will have an assessment of the efficiency of this measure, a first assessment in this year. We are starting the study, and more complete next year because we need to have feedback of about 3 years in order to compare the growth of these companies with the growth of companies similar but that not now using this facility.
And do you think that such things are likely to change or just stay the same?
I think it helps, and one aim is, there is 2 goals. One is to give a signal to the entrepreneurs in order that in France we love the entrepreneur, we love people taking risk. And the other one is, of course, to have it more favorable because social contributions are slightly high in France. It can be up to 60% of the salary, so it's rather significant. But what I think is that global environment with the other companies, with the public laboratories, is maybe in a lot of cases more important than the tax incentive. Okay. To have a favorable environment for creating and for developing the company is very likely more important than the grants or than the tax rebates, but it helps too.
Just a comment. I think that it's great that France and then some other countries in Europe are doing such, because actually I think that it's better now to start a company there than here actually. And the reason why is because for an eventual type of exit, it's like if you're going to eventually list on, say, Euronext or Swiss Exchange or whatever, they like the smaller companies, whereas you have to be a really big thing here to eventually have an exit, and therefore that drives the capital for these companies. And so when you're talking about the availability of capital to start up here in this area, I would have to disagree that there is. It's very little and it's very hard to get for companies. That's all.
Let me comment on that. There's no question that there is a huge selection, and I think you're right that VC money has been way tighter in the last 5 years in the biotech space specifically. But there is also new monies coming in that again recognize this gap that I discussed. Angels cannot do all that, specifically in drug development. I didn't elaborate on that a minute ago, because I didn't have the time, but for the specific space of drug development, which of course is huge in biotech, angels are not the most effective ways to address that gap. They can sometime, and I've got an example, for example, of a company called Trius now that was called RX3 in town, that was funded through grants and angel money, and now have been able to attract a major VC round of funding for major antibiotic products in the pipeline. So, but this is more the exception than the rule, I have to say. There is now, in the last, I would say, 12 months, maybe 18 months, a huge recognition that that's lacking in the VC world, and that's been addressed. I mean, in fact, I'm part of a early stage VC group that's trying to address exactly this gap and try to be able to provide $1 million or $2 million, up to $2 million for early stage bio ventures that have the merit to get that money. And so again, addressing this big gap that we have right now in funding. You're absolutely right that the money have been migrating heavily towards late stage funding, and that's regrettable. And again, there is a movement to try to move back to the early stage, and the pendulum is going to swing back. I mean, it's a matter of time, but the pendulum is already swinging back towards the early stage, and hopefully we'll even get there faster than we've seen currently.
Okay, François, excuse me to stop you there, but I would like to thank the speakers of the first panel. So we'll have plenty more time after for more questions during the networking. So now it would be my pleasure to introduce Alan Lewis, who is a big figure in San Diego, and now even everybody else who didn't know him until now knows him. He's the CEO of Novocell, and surprisingly a Welsh, pretty francophile.
Yes. Well, I'm not an actor nor an angel, and we've heard about, I think somebody mentioned we are actors here, but I'm not the devil either. I don't think. Well, it's my pleasure to be here this evening, and what I intend to do is to invite the actual panel to come up to the table, and maybe if you could all come on up, and you will see from their photographs and their names who they are. Well, it's in the dark here now, so over on my closest to me is Professor Fabien Calvo, who's chairman, Hôpital Saint Louis, part of the Medicine Biocluster. Next to him is, let's see, you're connected with the photograph, you know? Yeah. You're all so good looking, I can't read. Antoine Corno. Get my way out of that, right? He's president of UC Croft. I guess it's to do with CRO type, their French effort in TerraFarm 2. Catherine LaSalle, who's a director of LEAM. Now, I don't know much about these companies, these individuals, so they're going to tell us in just a minute what these things are. So I'll just walk through the table. Then we have another Patrick Serroin, who's an attorney, and then Franck Tataz, a European patent attorney. So what I propose doing is asking each of the panelists to just spend just a couple of minutes on why they're here, what they do a little bit. They won't give us too many statistics. You've seen some already. And then we'll get into a Q&A session, which will give you all a chance to probe deeply and get some more information from each of them. So, Prof. Calvo, would you like to start?
Sure.
And you can sit there and do it, and that'd be just fine.
Can I stay sitting?
Well, if you can stand or sit, whatever you'd like. Sitting, you look good there.
Just for the... Okay, thank you very much. So I am a physician and I'm an oncologist. I'm heading a structure in France which is called the Clinical Research Center, in which we are doing clinical investigation, mainly phase 1 and phase 2 trials. And I am also the coordinator of Paris-Île-de-France, the Paris area, a network of all the same structures which are doing phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials. So we have set up one point entry for clinical trials in the Paris area. So that means that we can, the issue is that we have, for instance, 120 patients entering phase 1, phase 2 trials each month in Paris, and about 20 children entering the same type of clinical trials in a month. So I'm here just to present this structure and say that we are welcoming biotechs and larger companies to come to France to perform their initial clinical trials, because I believe that we have a lot to propose to you.
Okay, thank you.
What we'll do, we'll whisk through everybody and then we'll get the questions going. So, Antoine?
And I am an entrepreneur, and I'm very happy to hear at San Diego that my government like the entrepreneur. So it's nice to hear that here. Maybe you could repeat that in French too.
Well, isn't entrepreneur French anyway? So you have to be, right?
And I'm also the president of the European Federation of CRO, and we are trying to promote the French and the European clinical research in state and in Japan. It's why I'm here today.
Thank you. Catherine?
I'm Catherine Lassalle. I'm a physician, a pediatrician, and I'm in charge of all the scientific, medical, and pharmaceutical affairs in the LEM. So the LEM is the French Association of Pharmaceutical Industry, as you are pharma, and the LEM strongly supports research and biotechnology by two organizations. The first one is the LEM Recherche. It's an original joint association between academic research organizations and pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical companies to improve public and private partnerships. The second organization is the LEM Biotech, which had been created 3 years ago by Marc de Garidels, the president of Amgen France. And it's also to promote bioactivities in France, and for example, to improve exchanges and to help biotech on a regulatory point of view, for example. The LEM carried out 2 studies in 2006, one on the international clinical trials, the other one on cell therapy, and these 2 studies show that France has a very good competitive position in Europe.
Thank you, Catherine. Patrick?
Good evening, my name is Patrick Sorin, I'm a French attorney at law. I'm very glad to be here tonight. I would like to address special thanks to Vice Minister Rousseau, who did my job basically tonight, because I was here to present the tax measures that the French government has implemented to attract foreign direct investments to France. In case there would be, just additional questions, I would be glad to try and answer them. So, thanks,
Okay. Thanks.
Minister.
And finally, Frank at the end.
So I'm Frank Detas. I'm French and European patent attorney. So as an IP law firm, the wealth of my clients is also the wealth of my wealth. And I'm here to promote relationship between the US and France, and especially for the French biotech company. It's important to find support in other countries and to develop themselves. So I'm here, of course, to answer to any question about European patent law if you are interested in.
So are you all based in Paris, or are you in, I assume, are you?
Yes, we are.
Oh,
No.
So you're you are the cluster, okay.
I am the Lyon cluster. In fact, I'm here with the Paris region because the main office of my firm is in Paris, so I'm also having a good interest in Paris region.
He was supposed to say he's a Persian as well, but anyway.
Okay, folks, so now you have a little sense of what they represent. So you have the A-team here. So any questions for them? Please use the mic if you do, and indicate who you are. And while you think, are you thinking of getting up? No, he's okay. There was movement in the crowd. Okay, well, let me start, and maybe I was at a company until fairly recently, Celgene, which is the big oncology company, and obviously
it's always tricky to get. There's so many companies in the United States doing oncology work because it's supposedly relatively simple to get a compound approved, not that easy, but there's a vast number of clinical trials. And so I don't think Celgene ever did a clinical trial in Paris, but are you finding a lot of American companies coming to you? Are they aware of, obviously you've got a rich tradition in oncology, there's little doubt about that, with some wonderful scientists as well. So is much happening in this regard? Are you finding lots of companies from the US seeking clinical trial involvement from you, or is this sort of is it fairly hidden from us all?
I believe it's increasing this way. As you said, that there is an increasing number of biotech companies, increasing number of drugs, and people are looking for space to perform these early clinical trials. So obviously we have a big demand now, an increasing demand from biotechs and from US biotechs.
So in the cluster where you are there many oncology companies? Are they doing things on biomarkers and things of that nature, which would help facilitate some of this work?
Sure, I believe that it is a major point for the development of these early clinical trials, the proof of concept. And for instance, I can tell you that we have developed, the government has helped the Ministry of Health, the National Institute of Health, and the National Cancer Institute in France have funded since now 5 years the development of biobanks, tissue, tumors, DNA, constitutional DNA, fluids. They have funded the storage and the annotation of all these samples. And all this is at the disposition of not only the academic, not only for academic purposes, but also for at the disposition of biotechs to validate their work.
I understand that you're also recently become the head of the French equivalent of the National Cancer Institute, the NCI. Is that correct?
Next week, yeah.
Next week, okay, all right. It's too early to say how's the job going. Lynette.
Okay, I have a couple of questions for Professor Fabian. One is, why would an American company choose to collaborate with your center to do clinical trials vis-a-vis other countries in Europe? That's number one. And number two, for bone marrow transplants, what are some of the key requirements relative to, in France, relative to accepting a product, a preclinical development product, to get into phase 1-2 trials in France?
Okay, let's start with the first one, which is a large problem, obviously, because the competition is heavy between all these countries, and there are probably a lot of reasons to choose France, and especially the Paris hospital network. I should say first the quality of medicine is very important, and for the early development of a drug, the quality of medicine is crucial, since if it doesn't work well, I mean, if the drug is killed very quickly. So this is the first point, and I think it's probably one of the major points. Second, we have developed networks of pathologies that allows, when you propose to test a new drug in a specific pathology, to have access to a large number of patients. We have this type of networks for acute leukemias, chronic leukemias, myelomas, melanoma. We have really developed these networks, which are not only for Parisian hospital, but also for all around France. And also now some of these groups are leaders in Europe. So you can have access to a large number of patients. The third reason, I should say, should be the access to the platforms and access to biobanks, access to the National Institute of Health research units, in which you can perform all the proof of validate the hypothesis and on the pharmacodynamics of the drugs.
Now, you had a very specific question, Alain. I'm sure, for time's sake, you could maybe color Professor Calvo a little bit later and get more specifics. And I'm sure he'll do it for free, consult with you for free. Sure. That's a promise, okay? Okay, all right, now next to you, obviously, we have okay, Phil. Go ahead, yes, please. Could you use the mic? Yeah, and mention who you are, if you would.
Hi, I'm Claudio Juazeiro from the Scripps Research Institute. So we are seeing here in the U.S. a lot of outsourcing of clinical trials to developing countries, in particular to China. And one of the driving forces is the high cost of drug development. Here, which is also true for Europe in general and France in particular. And then in France, I'd imagine that you have another difficulty in conducting trials, which would be the smaller size of patient populations compared to what you can get here in this country. So how is France handling that? Is there a significant outsourcing of trials to Latin America or to China or India? And how do you handle, how does your regulatory agency handle data from these other countries?
So maybe Antoine, would you take that one, or Catherine, which either would?
First of all, in terms of the size of population, you are right. So that's why the added value in France is really in early development and in phase 1 and 2, certainly. Concerning the European agency, because for innovative product, you have to ask a central submission, European central submission to the EMEA, not on a national point of view. So for the EMEA, I think that more and more the rules are the same than the FDA. So you need to have patients in phase 3 in Europe. But the number of patients is not obligatory very high, and you can have also some Asian patients or some patients from South Africa. So I think that the rules are quite the same. But I would like to say also that one thing is very, very important, particularly in oncohematology, but also for neurodegenerative diseases and in infectious diseases, hepatitis and HIV. It's the importance of our key opinion leaders, because Professor Calvo is very modest, but we can really say that these key opinion leaders have a very active participation in the EMEA, so the European Agency, for creation of clinical trial guidelines, but also for evaluation. So it's a major point, particularly in oncohematology. When you carry out clinical trial in France, you have the support of the key opinion leader. And I have to say also that the size of the market, the compassionate use with a with the French specificity are also very important to carry out clinical trials.
Would you care to add anything?
Just to add that 45% of our studies are phase 1 and phase 2 studies, and 25% of our studies are studies in oncology. So it's the image that we stress our effort on phase 1 and phase 2, and especially in oncology.
Are there many pure French CROs, or are they mainly sort of international ones?
In the different European countries, we have between 50 to 70 CROs per country. So you can find the large international, intercontinental, and cheap American one. And,
cheap American?
But you can subcontract to some local, national, or European CROs. There's a very large panel.
I don't know what it's like in France, obviously, but patients, is it easy to get patients for these clinical trials? Are they lining up to get, I know you have obviously socialized medicine there, but obviously over here people line up for clinical trials because they don't have any medical insurance and they get on clinical trials that way. But obviously you don't have the same issues there. So how easy is it to access patients?
That's a good question. All the French people are covered by their health national insurance, so at the end of the day, they don't need to be included in the clinical studies. However, in the infectious diseases, in the CNS diseases, the patient are looking for a new product, and so it means that at the end of the day, they are looking for to be included in clinical studies, even if you have a good health system.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. He's still looking for his money there. So he's going to ask the tax guy one more time. See if you get the same answer.
You have to be, you know that you have to be an entrepreneur in France. You're going to take some risks.
He looks the part, though. He's got the hair, the shirt.
Disparate questions here. One for Dr. Cavo and the other for Dr. Salk. First, could you talk a little bit about the sort of tech transfer at your institution? Our company has done a couple of these with various institutions in France, and they've been just widely ranging. And so perhaps you could go into when a company does a collaboration with your hospital, you know, how that process works and also what you're looking for. And then the second question is more on the getting reimbursed for your products in France once you get your CE mark for your device or your drug. How does that process work, or is there a European-wide facility, or is it more France-specific? Do you have to do a specific clinical trial in France for that reimbursement to happen? Thanks.
A lot of questions there. I'm going to take it.
For the second question, thank you very much. It's very interesting, I think, to say. We have a specific evaluation, which is a post-marketing evaluation done by an independent authority, the health authority. Yes, the health authority, which is a scientific evaluation. And the purpose of this evaluation is to give an advice to the Ministry of Health if the product will be reimbursed or not, first question. And second question, it's an advice on the improvement of the medical service done by this product. So for the first question, the market authorization dossier is enough to say, yes, I propose to the minister to reimburse or not. For the second question, our scientists evaluate the improvement of the medical service. So they are very disappointed when they have also placebo studies, because they can say that the product is effective, that the benefit-risk ratio is okay, but they can't say this product is better than another product. So when you are in rare diseases, when you have where patients have no other possible treatment, then it's okay with placebo studies. In the other case, it's maybe very difficult to have a good evaluation, and then it's maybe difficult to negotiate a good price. So, and I think it's more and more in Europe, and I don't know if in the US it's not also the same tendency, that we need a comparative evaluation between drugs to be sure to have reimbursement, but also a good evaluation for a good price. And in Europe, the system in France is very efficacious, I think. You have a system not equivalent, but the NICE in the UK made this also an evaluation, but not just after registration, 1, 2, years after. And in Germany, you have also the Quick, who makes also post-marketing evaluation. So I think in Europe, more and more, it will be necessary to have comparative studies with an active comparator.
What about switching let's go back to the taxes again and the benefits of moving to do, for the young investor to be in Paris. I assume that you came up with an idea based on benchmark in other countries. Would that be correct, or did you just?
Sure.
So where do you stack versus other? There's plenty of other countries in Switzerland, for example, where they try and entice you to go there on the basis of major tax benefits. So
the answer, Alan, is quite obvious. Ahead. The French tax regimes, as Mr. Vice Minister Rousseau presented, are very broad and very easily applicable. But Mr. Vice Minister Rousseau meant to present as well the French research and development tax credit that really supports SMEs, but also maybe larger companies in their R&D activities, because that leads to an actual credit that is offsettable against the tax. Now, you might say that there are various opportunities to obtain a full tax exemption during the early years, as Vice Minister Rousseau presented. Yes, so what would be the rationality of benefiting from a tax credit where there's no tax to be paid? Well, the answer to that would be that the French Treasury actually performs a refund. So that's a check. You would get a check from the French Treasury if you can't offset a tax credit because you're in a loss position in the early years, for instance, or you are profit-making but benefit from a tax exemption. So you would obtain a payback. That could be a good advice for this gentleman that was maybe short of cash.
Okay, thanks.
But excuse me, baby, just to fully answer your question, of course, all European countries have adopted tax incentives for R&D. This is obvious. Some have decided to put the stress on some strategies like a grant or a subsidy or maybe an increased deduction. France has both, since you get the deduction and a credit. So that's quite unique.
Okay, next question.
My name is Yongqi Wang. I work for a pharmaceutical company called Ferring Pharmaceuticals, which is headquartered in Switzerland. And I'm also an MBA student with the Radio School at UCSD. I have two questions for the panel. The first one is, I'm trying to compare the clinical trial environment in France versus in China. How long does it take for a company to start clinical trials in France? How long does it take to go through the IND application to get approval, the investigational new drug phase? And that's the first one, because I think that's a weak spot currently in China, because it takes a little longer time in China, but overall process is shorter. That's the first question. The second one is, what's the public view and government position on gene therapy in general in France?
For the first question, the process, the French process is an European process. And clinical trial directive have been published in 2001. When you want to start a study, you have to submit your dossier to one ethic committee per country and to one competent authority per country. The competent authority could be the drug agency or the health ministry. It's a parallel procedure. And you can complete the dossier in English, and you can send the dossier by an electronic submission. They have to give you an answer within 60 days. But there is an internal competitiveness between the different countries. So the average is that you can receive the answer within 30 to 35 days. So at the end, it means that you can't start a study within 60 days, but maybe it could be 3 to 4 weeks. But take care that then you have to set up the study, and you have to set up the study in the hospital, and you have to negotiate the contract with the hospital. And in some cases, it takes some time. It could be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and in some cases, 1 or 2 months, so it's longer. So at the end, you can set up a study, in phase 2 study, I'm speaking phase 2 studies, within 3 to 4 months, but not more.
Phase 2.
Phase 2, phase 3, yeah. Yeah.
What about to start phase 1?
Oh, phase 1, that if it's in phase 1 with healthy volunteers, normally you have the answer from the ethics committee and the competent authority within 3 to 4 weeks, not more. Then you can start very quickly. If you're working with CRO, it's very quick. If you are working on phase 1 with patient in a hospital, you have always to negotiate the contract with the hospital, which can take 2 to 4 weeks.
I don't want to open a can of
Well,
worms.
yeah, well, no. You could probably have a further discussion with the folks after. We're almost coming to the end of the session. I really would like to make sure that we have plenty of time to have a chat socially, as well as gives you more one-on-one time with folks. I know that we've left you at the end, Franck, and patent attorneys, they're pretty important people. They paid a lot of money, I know that, so I assume it's the same in France. One of the things that I work for a stem cell company, and obviously there is sensitivity about doing embryonic stem cell research. You, I'm sure, are very involved with some of the patents which are linked to that, and the Wolf patents. Would that be correct? Or not?
It's basically Jacques Barquin who should come here, and I'm replacing him. But we are involved, yes, in biotech patenting.
So is the environment in France encouraging for stem cell research? And based, obviously you would know based on sort of patents that sort of flow through and things of that nature.
On the patent point of view, you will have in all Europe 2 systems, one in the French system and one the European Patent Office system to have your invention protected in Europe. And then it depends. We have in France a more strict approach with biotechnology. There was a directive on biotechnology implemented in France with more restriction about bioethics, because there are great concern about ethics in France. So this is for the French patents, but for European patents we have what is in the biotechnology directive. So if you want really to have protection with less restriction than with the French law, you go for a European patent. And basically there are some controversy with the fact that you can protect human cells, especially human stem cells so far. In the meantime, when you can, it's always a debate where you need to promote industry, and I'm sure that in the next year we'll have some patents granted on cells modified, because it's clearly not a natural cell. The same way we protected genes and DNAs and or living material years before we had this controversy about GMOs, and it's really the way there is a support for R&D. Of course, there is a great concern for ethics in Europe, so it's part of the debate, but I'm sure the industry is aware of these ethical problems also.
Right. Well, I think at that point, I'd like to close this panel and thank everyone for their contributions. And obviously thank the previous panel and the folks, the angels that we heard. And I think we need to go to the bar and the food. Okay, folks. That was good. Enjoyed it. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, sir. That was fun. Thank you. Yeah.